Thank you so much, Natalia. Thank you. Thanks, Pari, for setting the context on a real high note. Clearly, enterprises across the world are transforming at the intersection of skills, data, and digital. And over the last 3 years, and more specifically in the pandemic, automation has emerged as both an upstream enabler and a downstream executor for enterprises in charting the transformation journey. So much so that many enterprises are calling this the new operating system, the automation OS. Any automation journey really starts with identifying the right processes, which feeds into digitizing workflows, and sometimes even full business process transformation. The magic of workflow automations, RPA, API, and many other such technologies actually follows, and AI comes in as a powerful wrapper around all of this. The real question, though, is how successful have been companies in orchestrating these steps? What works and what doesn't work? And more importantly, how should enterprises think about this as they go forward and define their own transformation journey? All this and many more such themes that we will cover in this panel, and I'm super excited to get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. It's a pleasure to have all of you for this panel discussion, and let's dive right in. Lene, I'm going to just start with you, if you don't mind. Clearly, Pari in his keynote emphasized on a converged approach for scaling automation that enterprises really need to take by pulling in capabilities from business, from GBS, from IT, and several such departments. What are some of the challenges in your role as a GBS leader and someone who is leading automation initiative for Novo? What are the challenges do you see in making that convergence work? What should really automation leaders do to be able to orchestrate organizational capabilities to deliver automation scale?
Well, thank you, Praveen, and thank you for inviting me. Well, I think one of our challenges, so we are a big pharmaceutical company, and our main product is insulin for diabetes, or at least products for diabetes. And we've been living a pretty nice life until now, pretty silent, long development times, etc. But the whole thing is changing these days. And what we see is the external world is changing very fast. And what is difficult for us in our organization is to change our culture as fast as the surrounding world is changing. So especially this siloed approach to how we deal with it, we've been so used to first comes early discovery, then development, then we start maturing for production, and then our supply chain starts, etc. I think the siloed approach is simply dying. So I totally agree with Pari that we need to sort of do something else instead of thinking siloed, having siloed budgets, having siloed automation, because it's simply too slow. And we need to have a much more focus on how do we collaborate across the silos, and how do we actually ignite our shared service center or centers, because they need to take part of the role to free up time and money in other parts of the organization. So I think there are several things, including our culture, we really need to change these days, and it needs to go very, very fast.
Perfect. So I think the whole acceleration to market, the need for speed, in your view, are the drivers, and therefore this importance of coming together and taking a top-down view instead of a bottoms-up view seems like the way you're describing it, Lene, right?
Yeah.
So Ratan, let me just pick on that. And I think it's a good segue because you represent a very large Asian bank. And obviously, like for everyone else, the pandemic, in your case as well, the business case for automation became very evident. And, it is obviously in your case in specific, it's always been a boardroom priority, right? You have always looked at digitization and automation from a top-down perspective. Historically, and before this pandemic hit, and to Lene's point, most of the automation programs were structured bottoms up, right? Like Pari mentioned, every time you have to go do a business case, you have to convince several people in the organization, answer everybody's question. And it's a very difficult journey, I would tend to believe, from a bottoms up perspective. You had a little bit of an advantage in the sense that it was always top down, right? So talk to our audience in terms of how does such a top-down program differ from one that is bottoms up? What do you deal with, and what are the challenges and advantages of a top-down model, Ratan?
Yeah, thanks, Praveen, for getting me here on this call. Am I audible? Just
Yes, you are.
So look, I think you are right. To an extent, we've been driving automation as one of the strategic drivers for the bank. And for us, we are the third largest private sector bank, growing at a rapid pace, but our hunger is to grow even faster and really grow our market share. And therefore, we decided that not only for our operational capability, wherein we have defined that we will become predictable, resilient, and continuously improving. For us to achieve that, we decided that we will do that through process transformation, using people capability, analytics, and automation. These are the drivers, these are strategic drivers we actually present to the board. But truth is that while that is at one level, that even before, let's say, COVID, we've been driving automation from the top, and therefore the business leaders are aligned towards driving more digitization and automation. But COVID actually helped us in many ways to really bridge that gaps. So previously it used to be more, you have a physical process and you actually bring in digitization, and therefore it became more a digital world. Now it's actually it's got reversed. Everybody wants to have a digital process, and therein you actually bring in physical as an alternate channel. So that what is alternate has, the definition of alternate has changed. So that's one. The second element, which is even more profound for us, is that we are actually creating a pure play digital bank, thinking that's the new bank that we are creating. And our belief is that 3 years from now, here on, we will have as much of a size of an Axis bank, which will be pure play digital bank. But the existing bank, which is 25-year-old bank, has to also undergo significant transformation. And therefore, we are automating a bunch of our processes to be able to make it digital ready. So at some point, these two banks, that's how we are sort of approaching. So to that extent, we are really working on multiple fronts. So I think Pari was talking about releasing 100,000, 150,000 man hours of resource. We have already delivered 750 bots, delivering 350,000 man hours of saving, and it's growing. And our target is to grow to 2,000 by end of 2022.
So how does the rhythm, Ratan, just to build on this, right? How does the rhythm of doing this differ because you have a top-down mandate? Are you answerable on a quarterly basis? Give us a little bit of kind of the speed dimension of why you are able to do this at such a pace.
So look, we have defined what is GPS for us. We call it as a growth, profitability, sustainability levers for the bank. And that's actually tracked at a board level. It has got few very key metrics like any other bank. One very important one is CX, customer experience. And we have defined ourselves to be distinctive and the most obsessed bank in Asia. And that's actually a stated agenda for us. The second, of course, we want to achieve a certain percentage of ROE. And for us to achieve some of these numbers, we defined that we got to have certain operational capabilities from an end-to-end perspective. So we don't do automation only for the operation unit or the shared services unit or the contact centers. We actually go all the way to the front channel and say, can I bring in more digitization at the front end? So take, for example, I need to do account opening instantly. And it has to be fully fledged account where customer can use it instantly. How do I do that? So fortunately for us in India, the ecosystem allows you to ping a lot of government databases to be able to identify a customer. So you do instantly do a BYOD, we call it bring your own device. The sales guys are able to get to the customer and input few data points, ping it to the government database, validate it, do 63 different checks using an automation tool for KYC, and then set up that account instantly and allow the customer to use it. And if the account, our belief is that if we can bring down the account opening turnaround from time from 3 days to 3 hours, the activation rate goes up from 37% to 82%. And that's the success rate. And it is clearly linked with ROE that you've got to deliver. And that's going in for everything. So we do 10 seconds personal loan. We do something like 1 hour SME credit lending. Now, all of these are business imperatives. It involves transforming sales. It also involves transforming mid-office or underwriting and the operation flows.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm going to come back to you on the discovery of the use cases part. But one thing that's clearly resonating based on what Pari also talked about is that looks like you started with business imperative, right? What is your industry all about, which in this case is about digital banking and return on equity and customer experience. And that became the fulcrum of how you thought of the entire automation journey and kind of build the organization muscle power, from that perspective. So that's really good to corroborate in terms of what Pari was also talking about. Let me turn to Eric very quickly. Both Eric and Matt represent the supply ecosystem. They are very strong platform providers in Nintex and Appian. Eric, I'm going to just start with you first. I think while this whole talk about automation being a priority and top-down mandates becoming a lot more visible, we are hearing a lot of chatter about improving the ease of use of the platform, right? In this case, platforms like Nintex, Appian, UiPath, many others, right? And whenever we bring the context of ease of use, Eric, a lot of time we hear things like, hey, let's verticalize the stack, right? Let's make it so relevant in the context of the customer that every use case in that vertical, we have built some accelerators or the others to drive scale, right? So you have been leading this company for a number of years now. You have seen the industry up close. What have been your observations in terms of improving platform adoption by enterprises like Ratan's and like Lene's, who are trying to really massively scale their enterprise automation adoption?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Praveen, and I appreciate the question. I think it's a great one. When I look back at when I first started here, 8 years ago, we used to think a lot about the technology usability itself, just generically the capabilities. I think what we found, though, is that that was okay for allowing a wider audience to be able to leverage and build more and build faster. But what customers really want is they want answers to specific problems. And the gentleman who leads up a big part of our company, our president of go-to-market, he has a saying that customers really want two things from us. They want us to be really easy to buy from, and they want us to show value quickly and repeatedly. And when you think about that second part, when you get into that, what it really requires is deep industry knowledge of those processes, and then building solutions. And we all have different names and ways we call them. Some companies are going to call them apps. Some are going to call them accelerators or templates. But packaging up very specific answers so that we can accelerate the time to value, we have seen enormous progress there. In fact, Ratan was talking about know your customer. That's actually one of the use cases that we've built up a package solution around. And so we can go into a bank, and when we're talking about how do you more quickly bring on that new customer, exactly the things that we're talking about, we've built pre-packaged accelerators for. And so that's one area is banking. And so our business specifically in banking and more holistically financial services has definitely gotten a lot better. And when I think about things like the pandemic, what happened across the globe, right? Many different countries created these special lending programs, right? Where the government was co-funding. Well, the infrastructure didn't exist to support those programs. And so overnight, customers used platforms like ours and others to quickly make those solutions. And a lot of that was pre-packaging we done. I think another area we've seen it even in government. And so whether it's state, local, or federal, there's a number of challenges that are common across the board. And whether that's things like permitting or licensing, or it's some of the things that are very specific to COVID. When I think about all of these, extended unemployment help programs, we were able to build packaged solutions around that. And the other thing I would add is, when customers want that full solution, it's partly the accelerators, but they would also like some prepackaged services to go with it. And whether those come from us or they come from a partner, we're fairly indifferent. But at the end of the day, it is about quickly and repeatedly and reliably delivering and showing value.
Awesome. Matt, I'm going to ask you the same question, but slightly differently. Eric talked about pre-packaging versus services. Obviously, that's a big equation, both for internal folks within the enterprise, because a lot of automation initiatives see the day of the light is because there are a lot of people involved, and many enterprises would like to keep the services angle to themselves. And then there is this whole outsourcing industry, which is also looking to share a pie in the automation world. How much of this verticalization of stack or building accelerators or building low code, no code applications is truly seeing the day of the light, Matt? And what are some of the trends you're observing as you're scaling the Appian platform yourself?
Great. Well, the primary trend is the one that you've spoken to since the beginning of this session, and that is the need for speed. Organizations have to move faster than they ever had to because in the last 2 years, they've seen their worlds change faster than they ever changed. So every organization today is learning to deal with that speed of change and learning to create change internally with their IT function as fast as change is coming at them from the outside world. So it's a mandate, and they've got to come up with technology that will enable that pivot. You mentioned ease of use, and ease of use is tremendously important in order to keep up. If it was an optional technology, we wouldn't have to be so easy because people could choose whether they wanted to use it or not. But now that it's becoming mandatory, it's got to be simple. What we create has to be accessible to all customers because now all customers want to use it. One of the ways you do that is by broadening the platform and putting together components that would have been separate products in the past. So you see a horizontal integration and a consolidation going on. At the same time, we see a vertical consolidation going on, which is to say on top of the platform, there's also a solution. There's also an accelerator. There's a component. You can make use of those in order to get more quickly to the endpoint that you need to achieve as a customer. The larger platforms have hundreds of thousands of users around the world. We've got a big community. We've got a lot of partners. All of these community members and partners are sharing the things they have built in our community. They're building their own modules. They're donating, contributing solutions to demonstrate their expertise. Appian is also publishing its solutions out into that community. And as a result, you get a lot of questions and answers, offerings and receipts. You get people benefiting from the creativity of the collective. We're absolutely going to have to deliver this functionality faster than ever before. An organization that wants to change needs a process, right? They need an application or a process. Yeah. And suddenly the world wants processes delivered really quickly. So our job is to find every way that we can make that safe, fast, and predictable for our customers. One of the ways is horizontal integration. One of the ways is vertical solutions. We're going to use both ways because speed has become the priority. It's pretty amazing, actually, how the economy now depends upon software to make a change. Decade ago, 2 decades ago, change was done in different ways. But now, if you want 100,000 people to all do the same thing and it's different from what they did yesterday, you're going to need software. And so the flexibility of software has become a top priority. It's almost ironic because for a long time, software was the least flexible thing in an organization. Suddenly, we need change from that. And so we're not only going to have to be good at getting them to the point that they need to be today, but letting them move in the future. It's not enough to deliver a rigid solution that'll solve today's problems. You know tomorrow's problems are going to be different from today's. We need something that keeps up and that can flex. And so a solution is good, but it also has to be a flexible solution. We have to incorporate changeability as a primary asset within our architecture.
Very interesting. So I think in not just horizontal and verticalization, but even adaptability, right? In terms of where the customer needs are and quickly enabling the platform to kind of understand those needs and develop custom solutions based on the needs of the customers equally critical. I want to touch upon a related topic, and Matt, maybe you can respond to this one first. We all hear a lot of talk about, in the context of what you said for need for speed, right? A lot of focus on infusing technology, even in process understanding and process mining. There've been, you yourself have made acquisitions in the past in terms of building the focus in this particular area. But when we talk to enterprises, and we'll take some comments from Ratan and Lene as well. When we talk to enterprises, they continue to cite challenges in terms of, despite using tools, they still need specialized skills to operate these tools, and resources spend a lot of data in interpreting data from these tools, etc. Right? So the question really is, are we at a point in time where process discovery is really becoming frictionless? Is it really becoming autonomous? How soon in the future will we get to a point where process discovery really delivers the business outcomes that enterprises are looking to get?
Process mining is going to be so much more valuable in 2022 than it has been in 2020 or 21. First of all, it was always a somewhat incomplete industry. It was a diagnostic without a cure. It would tell you, it would be an X-ray of your organization. It would tell you what was happening. It would analyze the usage logs and tell you what sequences and behaviors were going on. But then what, right? You're left with a model. You're left with a diagnosis. What we needed from the industry and what our customers want most is, what's the answer? If you see a problem, fix the problem. They want to move from that process mining map into a workflow. Frankly, they want to move right into a workflow so they can make changes and control how the process is going to run next time. And then they want to be able to use process mining as a repeated diagnostic to be sure that what they created is working. You need that closed loop. And I see Ratan nodding because he talked about the closed loop. He talked about the connection between automation and analytics. That was a great point that you made earlier when you were talking about how automation has to be checked and improved by constant reference back to analytics. Process mining is going to be that. It's going to be the closed loop improvement cycle that references analytics and then gets you back to automation. Our job, for those of us who are putting together platforms, I call them change engines, but platforms that are made to facilitate change in an organization, is to make each one of these components integrated and simple. You're right, it has been too complicated to use process mining in the past. And furthermore, it hasn't given you the outcome you needed. But next year is the year. We're bringing the technology together, we're reducing the complexity by far, and we're giving you a more important output from the process mining technology. And you're going to end up with something like this, right? Where you start with process mining and it goes into workflow and then finishes at automation. And you can just make a loop out of this. You need the components together. And those of us in the industry, it's going to be our job to bring that together and make it easy for you to use.
Awesome. I think I like the comment on closed loop. Eric, is 2022 going to be the year of process discovery becoming closed loop?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Matt on that. I think the vision that he laid out for where this is going is spot on. I mean, the last few years was a good start. It got people thinking about it. But the reality of it is the components are too disjointed, between process mining, task mining, right, full discovery, then the actually execution of the improvements in the enterprise back through to ongoing intelligence. I think what you're seeing is, and this plays into what Matt talked about in terms of the bigger platforms getting bigger. I mean, I feel like we each exchange maybe every quarter or two, one of us has got a press release on our latest acquisition. I mean, this market, the big players, the leaders are getting bigger, and we're providing the customer a more holistic solution. And back to that point I made earlier on showing value quickly and repeatedly, customers want answers to problems, right? And when I think about like Lene's world, of analyzing and trying to go faster in the pharmaceutical industry, right? You need a holistic view. And Matt said the right word, which is process. It's a set of processes, and that requires those process discovery technologies to be integrated with the full platform, to be ongoing with the analytics. And so you're constantly optimizing, changing, improving, transforming. That is where we're going to be in 2022 and beyond. And I think there's going to be a lot more value creation for customers, which is the part that matters.
Awesome. Let me extend that conversation a little bit on the process side and kind of marry it with what Pari talked about from a talent, perspective. And Lene, maybe I'll invite your comments on this, right? It is a reality that many enterprise processes are actually globally dispersed, and you would have seen this in Novo as well. Right? And a lot of these processes are actually, in fact, quite fragmented as well, right? So in that case, where these processes are dispersed and fragmented, does it really make sense to have an automation strategy that considers the global footprint, the offshoring footprint, or the outsourcing footprint of the enterprise? Or do these globally dispersed processes actually really become a bottleneck in scaling automation? What has been your experience, Lene, specifically because you're working out of a GBS, which is not in the headquarters? So give us some perspective there, if possible.
Yeah, but I think it is often these very complex processes with many different owners and many different handovers that become the bottleneck. Because if each owner sit and evaluates based on their budget and based on their part of the world without seeing the full process, then it ends up being a rather complicated piece of work to automate. And I'm just thinking, when I started in NovoNordisk 25 years ago, and you might think, 25 years ago, gosh, I started in business process reengineering. but have we become good at business process re-engineering? At that time, I remember when I went in for the job interview, I said, I think this is actually new wine on old bottles. Well, I actually think today it's just old bottles with a bit of new wine in again. So, but it is still about that, I mean, a lot of these processes cuts across many different owners. Let's just if you take an internal process like onboarding, imagine how many are actually involved. So it's finance, it's IT, it's HR, it's facilities. Yes. Do they collaborate? Well, maybe they do if they have a nice sort of checklist. But do they collaborate to really create a solution that's seen from the person that's being onboarded is both nimble, swift, and appealing? At least not in our company, I'm sorry to say. And it is simply because nobody do take ownership for these cross-functional processes, because they feel, well, we do take ownership of our particular part, which is to ensure that the data is in the HR systems, or which is to ensure that the employee gets a badge or whatever. But as a new employee, well, I'm pretty sure you would be thrilled if you just felt this was a swift flow with everybody collaborating, and it was actually automated, just as you feel like if you go to Amazon and you have to return something and you talk to the bot, and you know what? That bot with some artificial intelligence, that bot doesn't care whether it's something to do with the warehouse or with the sales, point of sales, or whether it's quality, etc. It just sort of integrates the whole thing. But to come back to your question, I think it is, again, back to our culture, back to throwing down all of these ways of thinking silo and thinking, I own something. Well, you don't own anything. You don't owe it. The company owns the processes, and you actually owe the company and the end customer to actually collaborate much more and create these smooth integrated processes. It sounds easy, and it's awfully difficult.
Yeah, I can only imagine, because if these processes are everywhere and there are a lot of handoffs required, and if the culture is not aligned, if the mandate is not top down, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I am guessing that at best, then in that case, enterprises can only do task automation, only the components that a particular team owns, and it will never be able to scale to a full enterprise level automation in that sense, right? So is that a true assessment? Is that really the core outcome if in case the collaboration doesn't happen forever in these organizations?
I believe so, yes. I think, and it's back to, I mean, one thing is collaborating internally, and you could say, well, the IT people, they cut across. Yeah, but do they really? Well, at least not in our company. We have manufacturing IT, we have commercial IT, we have R&D, IT, whatever. So they are also specialized. So who is it that actually looks across? And I mean, my answer would be, well, if I look at my GPS, I'm actually a mini copy of NovoNordisk. I'm the only place where we are graphically at the same place, and we are able to look across. But are we given the mandate? Not right now, but we're actually trying to take it, because we actually do see, hey, we are doing some of the similar things. Please allow us to maybe free up time in headquarters or in affiliates or in regions by us taking some of these cross-functional processes and trying to automate them.
Okay, awesome. So Ratan, you don't seem to have that challenge, right? Your processes are not, in true sense, not globally dispersed. What is your take on this?
Great question, Praveen. I think I wish we didn't have that problem. I'm actually in a hotel room. I came for a strategy meet. I told you, for the last 2 days, the entire management team, we've been talking exactly what Lene is trying to suggest, that how do you improve our execution? How do you improve our speed and agility? And how do we measure our automation index? We measure that as a metric. And which all processes are end-to-end automated fully? How many are semi-automated and how many are manual? And our current automation index is not great. And we have set an optimistic target of really going to 90% automation index as a bank. And for us to achieve that, we got to do a whole lot of things. And let me bring in the point which Lene mentioned, that it's really difficult to collaborate. But the good news is what Matt said, that once you bring automation, it kind of forces you to collaborate. And that's a great news about it, no? And what he spoke about, that whole closed looping, it in a sense, it's old wine in a new bottle. I mean, you remember Deming cycle used to say PDCA, plan, do, check, act, or the famous Six Sigma, they used to say DMAC, which is define, measure, analyze, improve, control. All of these are essentially closed looping. But by the way, while we are in same country, India, but we've got 3,500 branches, 150,000 people operating across close to 700 cities in India. So to that extent, for our processes also are fairly distributed. And therefore, we need to create what Eric said. What we are doing is, the moment the partners do come in and deliver a great solution, we create a package and kit to say, is this replicable in 20 other places? Like, for example, I spoke about the Know Your Customer solution, which I think Eric touched about. We have now created a package solution around it, and we are now deploying it in 21 different applications areas. And it is really making us faster, but easier said than done. There are 3 or 4 partners into this whole ecosystem, and I really want to convey that point, and I need support from partners, platform owners. One, clearly, I don't know which platform is going to give me the best outcome. That's number one. Number two, I have got a lot of my core systems, core lending system, core banking system. I've got my workflow management system. Who can integrate it faster, better, with speed and agility? 3, who can be showing some bit of flexibility to be able to align with my way of processes, rather than bringing the toolkit and say, this is my way or highway. And the 4th is, how do you really train my people so that I don't have to go back to you time and again? How do you bring in low code, no code, train my people who can do part of the job, and then I can go to you only as an expert support? So I'm actually creating almost 100-member team who would be having basic capability of creating those solution hooks and really make it happen. And therefore, so just to summarize, it is important for us to create those replicable toolkits so that it works well in both centralized and distributed environment. 2, ensuring closed looping. And 3, really work and choose partners who are capable of delivering all of these. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a really good comment and summary, Ratan. In fact, we're getting lots of audience questions. So I'm going to deprioritize my questions and quickly jump to that for a couple of minutes. A related question, this is for Eric and Matt, I think, to what Ratan was asking as an input from platform providers. I think the question really is, with the labyrinth of these best-in-class technologies in RPA, low-code, API, IDP, AI, chatbots, process mining, how does an enterprise really navigate all of this? What's the best practice to select the technology that works? Eric, Matt, any one of you want to pick this?
These industries are converging. In the past, you might have bought an RPA vendor and a process mining vendor and a low code or workflow vendor, and you'd have had to put together 3 different components. The integrations would have been difficult. The interfaces would have been different. The data would have been shared differently. That's too complicated, and it's not going to work for something that's as important as a change engine is today. So these industries are coming together. In my opinion, they're unifying, and so you're picking one platform that can do all of these components. It's also a really important decision because change is so important to an organization today. So choose carefully. Understand that you're picking a discipline, not a Band-Aid. It's not like a silo, right? I don't like silos either. I agree with Lene. Silos are the way we used to do technology. Now we want unification. Now we want ease of coordination and cooperation. And one of our greatest challenges, you mentioned this in a question a moment ago, is the dispersion of assets, be they data assets, systems, people, different kinds of workers. Dispersion is one of today's greatest challenges. So what we need is a unifying technology. When you pick a technology, look closely. Features matter, and understand that you've got to build a center of excellence and a behavior around how to use it. It won't be a silo that you just drop in. It's a loop of ever improving checks and improvements and expansions. So understand that you're engaging in a platform that you will grow with when you pick a new platform.
Perfect. Eric, your additional
Yeah,
comments?
so I just add a few things here. I think I would resonate, a lot of what Matt said would resonate with me also. A couple just additional perspectives. I think number one, when I look holistically, the customers we have that are the most successful, there's some common things I see in how they're organized. And so one, they do have that centralization. And I like the way you guys laid it out in your in the keynote with the more sophisticated view. It's not just IT or line of business. It's actually these global shared services functions combined with these process excellence groups. The organizations that do it best, they have those teams coming together. They're taking a more holistic across the enterprise view of process. And I think they're starting more on the process front of what do they have, and they're leveraging the technology to look across. And then what we see in our customers that do best, and I think are getting the highest ROI back, they make then the right decision, and they'll actually have fairly organized matrices around, if it's this type of situation, we want to use this technology. They do try to narrow down the number of providers. I think like Matt, I mean, we both do business with a lot of really large companies. And unfortunately, because a lot of them bought different things at different times in different places, I mean, I've been in accounts where they'll have 30 plus different technologies. They definitely need to get that down. And to bet on a very limited number of platforms is the right approach. And then have the guide rails set up of when you use what and why and where. And so we've got, I'd say, one of the probably competitors to Novo, one of the largest 5 pharmaceuticals on earth. They have a very coordinated function. They then have, they understand what the processes are. They understand what the process variants are across the organization. They leverage platforms that allow for speed and change, as Matt was talking about. And they leveraged 3 of us. Actually, 2 of the 3 are the 2 guys you have on the phone. I won't say the customer, but they leverage 2 of us and 1 other. And they do a great job, and they're a phenomenal company. So I think those are some of the things I would encourage customers to think about.
Perfect. I think it's getting very exciting, but we are also at the end of the time that's allocated to us. Just one more question to each, Lene and Ratan, and then we'll close it out. Lene, the first question to you that's coming from audiences. We talk a lot about customer experience, employee experience, and business resilience when we talk about automation. How real is that in the world that we all live in? Or is automation largely focused on cost savings and FTE reduction? So is it really changing the imperative, or is it still talking about cost and FTE as the primary driver?
So I think if we stick to our old dogmatism of cost reduction and effectiveness, of course we also stay with it. But having said that, I think in the modern world, we simply can't just overlook the end customer. And we are all becoming so digital in everything we do. I mean, I'm surrounded by all of these different devices and things to talk to you. So, I mean, the winners of the game are the ones who understand the end customers, and also the ones that can create trust with the end customers. So I believe that's absolutely also going to be a key mantra for the winners today. And that includes also within the company, because I believe that if we want to have the talents to stay with us, we also need to stay really sharp on what is our offering to them. We can't just stay with old systems, with old mobile phones, etc. We need to keep moving where the world is moving. So I think, I can't see that we can simply just keep looking at just effectiveness and cost reductions, etc. Of course, it goes hand in hand. And I think also Pari showed that, because he said, we need leaders who understand the business, the processes, and also the economy or the finance behind.
Yes.
So I mean, we can't just close our eyes and say forget about cost savings and effectiveness, but we simply can't close our eyes either to the customer experience. I think it's going to be key to success.
Awesome, perfect. And Ratan, this is an interesting question that's coming for you from the audience. The question really is about this ongoing debate between build versus buy or build versus partner. Did you consider building automation platforms internally? And what do you think are the pros and cons of doing it yourself?
So we evaluated. We don't really intend to build automation platform ourselves, because if our partners are spending billions of dollars to sort of create a platform and doing research, that's not our core competency. But for sure, we are doing work on three distinct fronts. Point number one, we are choosing the right partners to build solutions for us. And to go back to your previous question, wherein you asked, is cost the driver or CX the driver? My belief is that both are same. I mean, if we are seeing clearly that wherever we are delivering better CX, we are anyway saving a lot of cost. And therefore, that's important for us. The second, what we are definitely doing is that we are building our digital bank. And therefore, we are building solutions which are highly automated, highly digital-centric, future-looking processes, using some of the platforms and many more things. And third, which we are doing very, very importantly, is that we've got a bunch of cool fintech partners who are there in India. They need a bank like us to be able to develop, test their solution. And we need a partner who is nimble, who can do a lot of experimentation. So we are doing a whole bunch of partnership with the fintech companies to create capabilities and create customer convenience and make us look smarter. And therefore, together we win. So it's clearly three-front strategy. Number one, we don't want to build our platform. We want to build solutions for both CX, which delivers cost saving, and of course, a bunch of other metrics like ROI. We create digital bank and then transform the existing bank to be digital ready. And for that, we also bring fintech partners. So these are the three.
Really orchestrating the ecosystem around the solutions.
Around it, yeah, absolutely.
Around the solutions that are being built by other partners, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very interesting. I wish we had more time, but we have to call it a wrap right here. Thank you so much, all four of you, for sharing very candidly and openly your insights and learnings. I'm sure the audience had a ton of takeaways from this. Thank you so much for all that you do for this industry. It's really exciting time of the automation world, and I look forward to the true collaboration that starts happening in the enterprises. And from a 15 billion market, we are hoping that at some point, very soon in the future, we'll get to about $150 billion of investments in automation. On that note, thank you so much, and back to you, Natalia.